125 years ago, the vast tea-growing areas of India were covered in jungle. 85 years ago, the same was true of Ceylon. Today, future tea lands are being carved out of the East African jungle. But the transformation of jungle into an estate of mature tea is a long, costly business, like fighting a war. First, a clearing must be made by the advance troops. Wielding their pangas, they hack a passage foot by foot through the dense undergrowth. Then, in the wake of the pangas, comes an army of sharp axes and strong, tireless arms. Clearing is done at the beginning of the dry season, when operations will not be hampered by the rain. This also gives time for tropical decay to rot down the cut jungle growth. But dead wood may promote the growth of fungoid diseases in future tea bushes, so all stumps and trunks are moved right out of the clearing. Tea will not grow on alkaline or badly drained soil. The best soil is a medium loam, deep, porous, friable, and acid. Virgin jungle land has all these characteristics and a wealth of humus and plant food, the accumulated fertility of centuries which the jungle growth has carefully protected from the weathering effects of sun, wind, and rain. While the land is still being cleared, the most important task is to select a site for a nursery. This must be close to a perennial source of water, where the land is flat and sheltered. The first task is to dig the nursery beds to a depth of about 2 feet, removing all stones and roots. Then a lattice roof of bamboo is built. This will be overlaid with green fern to protect future plants from the scorching sun. But what of the future plants? Let's take a look at them right from the beginning. All tea bushes originate from an evergreen tropical tree belonging to the camellia family. After the tree has flowered, small green nuts or seeds form. This flowering and seeding takes place on bushes which are allowed to grow unchecked into trees 15 or 20 feet high. A big estate has a number of these trees forming a seed garden. Collecting the fallen seed is a task which provides the local children with pocket money. After being sorted and graded, the finally selected seed is placed on prepared germination beds. These beds consist of a layer of clean sand which contains no plant food of any kind. The seed contains within itself enough food for the period of germination. All it requires is to be kept constantly damp, warm, and protected from the sun by some form of shade. Meanwhile, in the nursery, beds are being prepared for the seed. With this board, a uniform planting distance is guaranteed and will make easier the future task of transplanting. After 3 weeks, the seed has germinated and is ready for planting. Each seed is placed crack downwards to ensure that the tiny root will grow straight and strong. Within a few months, bare earth becomes a pattern of healthy plants. During their life in the nursery, they must be well cared for, weeding, watering, and shading being the 3 indispensables. In many nurseries, from the north of India to Kenya, plants are growing up. From country to country, even from district to district, the details of nursery practice vary according to local climate and conditions, but the essentials and the end in view are exactly the same. After 1 to 2.5 years in the nursery beds, the plants are ready for removal to the gardens. In this Ceylon nursery, the plants are being taken from the beds by a mechanical transplanter. By this method, the plant and the earth around it are removed in one piece, leaving the root system completely undisturbed. The metal cup also protects the delicate roots from any damage during the transplanting and will be removed when the plant reaches its new home. In this way, thousands of the young plants are taken by the coolies to the new clearings out on the estate. In Darjeeling, tucked away in the foothills of the Himalayas, a different method of transplanting is being used. Perhaps this was the forerunner of the mechanical transplanter. The idea of leaving the roots undisturbed is certainly the same, although here the plant must be first forked loose from its bed. While the plants are being removed from the nursery, lining is done in the new clearings, as here in Kenya. This determines the exact position for each plant so that the men doing the holing know exactly where to dig. The plants being used on this clearing have been stumped, cut 4 inches above ground level before leaving the nursery. For really large-scale planting, this is perhaps the most economical method, and from the very beginning it encourages bush-shaped growth. Just behind the planters come other workers with bundles of ferns. These provide both shade and protection against accidental damage for the barely visible stump. But shade is the chief purpose, for the plants would quickly die if left exposed to the sun. The young plants are taking root in their final home, where they will grow to maturity and bearing and remain the full span of their lives, perhaps more than half a century. But they will never reach maturity unless a great deal of care is given to their upbringing. Constant weeding is ultra, and tea growing is no exception. By using hoes, not only are the weeds suppressed and removed, but the soil is aerated and kept in a good state of tillage. Later in life, the spread of the plant will itself help to suppress the weeds, and it's to encourage this spread into a bush that pruning is carried out. About a year after going into the garden, a stumped plant will be ready for its first up-pruning. This means that the plant is pruned, normally 3 times, at successively higher levels until it's brought to plucking. When a bush has been in bearing for a few years, it becomes necessary to reverse the procedure and down prune it. There are many different pruning systems, each one suiting the elevation of the land and particular climatic conditions. Wherever the location, however, every bush must at some time receive a heavier treatment in the form of a clean prune. All pruning, whatever system is used, aims at making the bush spread outwards rather than grow tree-like upwards. Several months after pruning, a new canopy of foliage has grown on the bush. A level and regular upper foliage is achieved by tipping, an operation repeated several times over a period of 2 to 3 months. The girls tip to the height of a notch on their canes, and every stalk tipped will form a future plucking point. Eventually, this forms the widest possible plucking surface, the plucking table. Tea was originally a jungle plant growing in a highly fertile soil under the protective shade of heavy forest. It is therefore in the interests of plants and soil to create near jungle conditions by a systematic policy of growing shade trees. These trees must provide good shade and a heavy leaf fall, and both features are stimulated by frequent lopping. All leaf, whether it falls naturally or comes from loppings, goes back to the soil as green manure. But the trees can never supply all the green material required, and are supplemented by bush and shrub leguminous plants growing between the rows of tea. These yield enormous quantities of loppings every year, loppings rich in nitrogen, which form an evenly distributed covering of green manure on the spot. Farmyard manure is also used to replenish the humus content of the soil, although planters usually find it difficult to obtain. And in most tea-growing areas, conditions are unfavorable to cattle ranching. In Kenya, however, this unusual combination has been quite successful, the herds supplying milk and meat for the workers, in addition to the valuable manure for the bushes. But manures alone are never enough to maintain the capital value of the hard-worked soil, and commercial fertilizers must be judiciously used, especially during the vital periods of the bush's life. All the tea-growing areas of the world are tropical or subtropical with a high annual rainfall. Wet and warm describes a bad cup of tea and a good tea-growing climate. At high altitudes, such as Darjeeling and some parts of Ceylon, the tea with the most characteristic flavor is grown. At these altitudes, the air is cooler, which retards leaf growth and improves its flavor, although consequently yield is less than on the plains. Unfortunately, mist is common in the humid atmosphere of the tea-growing districts, and in mist lurk the spores of various blights, which must be vigorously fought. There are many different kinds of blights and insects which ravage leaves, stems, wood, and roots of tea bushes. To assist the planter with these problems, there are a number of research stations, typical of them being the one in Kericho, Kenya. In addition to the study of pests and diseases and evolving means of combating them, these establishments cover every aspect of tea cultivation and conduct research into improving both the yield of bushes and the final quality of the tea. Perhaps the answers to many of these problems will eventually be found in the propagation of tea by vegetative means. For this work, bushes which are better than their neighbors in growth, yield, and resistance to disease are selected as the mother bushes. Each one will supply from 200 to 500 cuttings. Tea growing from seed does not produce progeny with anything like the same characteristics as the parent seed bearer. With vegetative propagation, on the other hand, each cutting is a progeny of a particular bush. All the virtues of the bush are fixed in the cutting. There is still much to be learnt about vegetative propagation, but already it has proved itself superior in many ways to growing from seed. The cultivation of tea is responsible for many headaches, but a day dawns, some 5 years after the plants went into the gardens, which repays all. The bushes are ready for plucking, in full flush, as the planter calls it. As the sun climbs up over thousands of acres of tea-growing country, the pluckers leave their villages and make for the fields to be harvested. In the Anomalis, South India, a little ritual precedes work. Perhaps the prayer is to the god of fertility. Perhaps to Dharma, who, legend says, discovered tea by chewing the leaf during a 7-year sleepless vigil. Thus the harvest is reaped, lines of pluckers moving across a table of tea, tea growing on the gentle slopes of South India, the high, steep, sometimes almost vertical hillsides of Ceylon and Darjeeling, and the plain-like gardens of Assam and East Africa. A skilled army are about their business. For plucking is a skilled operation upon which depends not only the quality of the black tea, but the future yield and health of the bush. It's a disturbance of nature's order of growth, inducing the bush to flush more rapidly than it would if left unplucked. Almost a light form of pruning. Like waves of locusts, intelligent locusts, disdaining all but the tenderest shoots, the pluckers move ever forward. It's an army of quick, discerning eyes and nimble, discriminating fingers schooled to gather the golden flush, 2 leaves and a bud. When Hessian and basket are full, it's time for weighment. As the leaf is weighed, the girls do some quick mental arithmetic, converting weights into bonuses. In a day, a girl may pluck 30,000 shoots, some 40 pounds of green leaf, which will become 10 pounds of black tea. At a guess, enough leaf is plucked throughout the world every year to make some 2,000 million pounds of manufactured tea, a fairly high-yielding bush contributing some 8 ounces towards this total. Now the leaf starts its journey from weighing shed to factory. Many contrasting means are used for transporting it. By sure-footed pony on the twisting, narrow hill tracks of Darjeeling, by aerial ropeway over the switchback hills of South India, by lorry on the flat roads of Kenya. Each method is best suited to the geography of the country. Throughout the day, throughout the year, a constant shuttle service feeds an endless supply of green leaf into many factories. On arrival at the factory, the leaf goes up to the withering loft with as little delay as possible. One method for doing this is a blower. This is situated alongside the unloading bay, and the leaf fed into it is blown along a chute non-stop to the withering loft. In the loft, the leaf will dry slowly for anything up to 24 hours. Spread out on the tats, it will lose around 40% of its weight by the evaporation of moisture, and eventually be ready for rolling. Rolling ruptures the leaf cells, setting free the sap and juices, and starting the important process of fermentation, which will continue for a few hours. Fermentation is finally arrested in the drying or firing machine. Here, a current of very hot air reduces moisture in the leaf to almost nil. Below the machine, the familiar black tea collects, fresh, warm, and aromatic. Various sized screens remove stalk and sort the dried leaf into different grades. Grades with names like broken orange pekoe, flowery broken orange pekoe, broken orange pekoe fannings. In chests, the tea is now ready for a faraway, unknown destination. Leaving the factory, it may start the journey by overhead ropeway, or by lorry it goes to the railhead, then into a distant city for domestic consumption or a port for shipment. From Assam, tea comes all the way to Calcutta by river. Some of it will supply the people of North India, but the bulk of it is for other lands. In Mombasa and Colombo, chests are going aboard ship. On every tide, moorings are quietly slipped, and modern clippers set course for the tea-drinking countries of the world.